Okay, we're going to look at division of rational expressions. Before we do that, we are going to just quickly review how you divide regular fractions. And if I had 4/7 divided by 2/3, when I divide fractions, I actually take the reciprocal of the second fraction, turn my problem into a multiplication problem, and then I can just multiply straight across. Now for this one, I'm going to go ahead and reduce before I multiply. So that 4 and that 2 I'm going to reduce down to a 2 and a 1. And then when I multiply across the top, I'll have 2 times 3, which gives you a 6, and 7 times 1 gives you a 7. We do that same process even when we have expressions involving variables. So I am going to keep my first fraction just like it is, and I am going to take the reciprocal of my second fraction and change my sign to multiply. So that 2xy to the fourth now comes to the top, and the 25x squared y goes to the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and reduce before I start to multiply these. I'm going to reduce the 25 with the 5, so that's going to change to a 5 and to a 1. I'm going to reduce this x on top with that x right there. I'm going to reduce this x on top with one of these x's down here, so I'll still have an x left on the bottom there. My y to the fourth, I'm going to reduce that with my y squared, so I would still have y squared on the top. And then I'm going to reduce this y squared that I have now with this y here, so I would actually only be left with the 1y on top. Going to rewrite it, so on top all I'm left with is 2y, and on the bottom I have a 3, I have a 5, and I have an x. Simplify that down and I have 2y over 15x for my final answer. And then you always want to double check at this point to make sure you can't reduce something else. So my 2 and my 15 still can't reduce. There aren't any other y's anywhere and there aren't any other x's, so this one would be done. Okay, here's another practice one. We're going to follow the same type of process, so my first fraction stays the same. My second fraction, I need to take the reciprocal and multiply. Now this one, a little bit different. It's not written in terms of multiply. I have addition and subtraction on the tops and on the bottoms of these. So this is one where I have to factor everything that I can possibly factor and then see if I can cancel out any groups. The 5x isn't going to factor into anything. The 3x minus 12, I can pull a 3 out of that, so I would be left with x minus 4. And the x squared minus 6x plus 8, I'm going to try to factor that out. And I'm going to use x and x. The plus 8 tells me that the signs match. The minus sign tells me that they match as minuses. Now I've got to find my factors of 8. They're 1 and 8, 2 and 4. I'm going to go ahead and put that 2 and 4 there because that should give me a 6. When I FOIL this back out to check it, I'm going to have x squared minus 4x minus 2x plus 8. Combine those, and that's going to give me x squared minus 6x plus 8, so that does factor into what I need it to. Need to factor out the bottom. When I look at that one, only thing I can do is pull out an x, and so it would factor into x times x minus 2. Now I want to look for things that I can cancel out. And remember, you can only cancel something with the top with something on the bottom. So this x minus 4, that will cancel out with the one on the top here. X minus 2 on the top will cancel with the x minus 2 on the bottom. The x right here will cancel out with that x. And it looks like all I have left is maybe a 5 on the top. And on the bottom all I have left is a 3. So that whole mess reduced down to 5/3. So now go ahead and pause the video and see what you come up with for this one. Alright, this one, you had to realize that the last fraction is actually over 1. So when you do the reciprocal of it, you have 1 over 2x squared plus 3x. I factored that top 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. I couldn't factor anything out here on the bottom. The 1 stayed a 1, and then I factored this bottom side. Now I have to go and I have to look for families because it's all written in multiplication now. So I have a 2x plus 3 here that can be crossed out with that 2x plus 3. Now I cannot reduce this x right here with that x because they're both on the bottom. So they do not get to cancel each other out. They're on the same side. So on the top, I am left with 3x minus 1. And since it's just being multiplied by 1, I don't have to write that. And then on the bottom, I have 6x squared times x. Well, now I want to combine those because I can simplify that. So I would end up with 3x minus 1 divided by 6x cubed. Remember, you cannot reduce that 3 and that 6 because this 3 is actually part of a family because of that minus sign there. Okay, here's a combination problem. So it's got multiplication and division in it. Now we still follow our order of operations for these problems, and keep in mind that multiplication and division are of equal importance, so we have to go left to right. So you are going to do the multiplication first on this particular problem. Well, when I multiply those two together, I want to see if I can cancel anything out from the tops and the bottoms, and there isn't anything, so right now I would have x times 4x plus 1 all over x plus 3. And I still have divided by the 16x squared minus 1 over the x plus 3. Still have to do the same process as we just did for division, so I need to flip that second fraction and change it to multiply. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip that second fraction, and I'm going to actually factor it at the same time. Hopefully you notice that the 16x squared minus 1 is a difference of 2 squares. So I would rewrite that as a 4x squared minus 1 squared. Follow the pattern in your flip books, and that would give us a 4x plus 1 and a 4x minus 1. So now I've got to see if I can cancel anything out. There we go. And I've got a 4x plus 1 on top and a 4x plus 1 on bottom. I've got that x plus 3 and that x plus 3. And that looks like it's it. So I am left with on the top just an x from right there. And on the bottom I'm left with 4x minus 1. Okay, now this one. Similar type of problem. It's a combination one, but now the division comes first. We still have to go left to right. So you are going to do the division of this one first. I'm going to go ahead and factor that first equation. So I'm going to pull out an x. Be left with x plus 11. Can't factor the bottom, so it stays as x minus 2. Now when I do the division, I have to multiply by the reciprocal. And that 3x squared plus 6x, I can pull out a 3x, and I would be left with x plus 2. Is there anything I can simplify on those? Well, only the x and the x. So right now I'm left with x plus 11 over x minus 2 times 3 times x plus 2. And I still have the rest of my problem here, the times x squared minus 4 over x plus 11. Now I can go ahead and see, or do the multiplication portion of this. So I need to go and factor that top part of this equation. It's the difference of 2 squares again, so it's going to be x plus 2 and x minus 2. Now I can go ahead and cross out my x plus 11 families. That x plus 2's will cancel out, that x minus 2's will cancel out. So on top, I am left with only a 1. There's nothing left on that top, so it's just a 1. And on the bottom, I'm only left with a 3. So that one reduced all the way down to 1/3. Okay, here's your last practice problem. So go ahead and pause the video. Make sure you work from left to right when you do this one. Okay, start by doing the multiplication portion. I factored both of the x squared equations. Then I noticed I could cancel my x plus 4's out. One's on top, one's on bottom. Could cancel my x minus 5's out. One was on top and one was on bottom. So from that portion, I was left with this x minus 3 on top, which I have right there, and this x plus 3 on bottom, which I have right there. Then I still had to do the division portion, so I had to divide by that expression right now, had to flip that expression over and multiply, that's here in the purple, and then I went ahead and I factored that x squared plus 6x plus 5. Last thing I need to do then is cancel. So I can cancel out my x plus 3's, and it looks like that's all I can cancel out, so I would be left with x plus 1 times x plus 5, all divided by x plus 3. You don't need to FOIL those top ones out. You want to go ahead and just leave them factored.